Workplace violence and active shooter incidents. Today, we're going to be discussing self-defense considerations for workplace violence. And I'm very lucky to have as my guest Craig Haley. He's the owner of Elite Force Martial Arts in Lighthouse Point, Florida. Craig is a seventh degree black belt with over 35 years of experience in teaching, so he definitely knows his stuff, and I think is going to add a lot to the conversation today. Craig, welcome.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
So we talked a little bit earlier and previously about about the benefits of martial arts and what it brings to the table. And I before we kind of get into that, just why don't we go over a little bit about your background, tell people who you are and how you how long you've been doing it, how you got started in martial arts.
Yeah. So I started in 1987. I was 10 years old. I was getting bullied at the bus stop and didn't have an ounce of confidence to defend myself. So my parents put me into karate, the local karate school, and it was right around the time that Karate Kid was a big deal, right? So really popular time to get involved in martial arts, and I fell in love with it. And I knew within weeks I wanted to be a black belt, and I knew within a year I wanted to be a professional instructor. I moved down to South Florida to open my first school in 2003. We just celebrated our 19th anniversary in that school, and been training in Kempo Karate since '87. Started Muay Thai kickboxing around '95, and then started in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu about 13 years ago. And I just got my black belt in Jiu-Jitsu last year. And it's just been a lifestyle. I opened up Elite Force Jiu-Jitsu with my Jiu-Jitsu coach and another mentor about 6 years ago. And it's the martial arts has totally transformed the type of person that I am. I couldn't speak enough about the experience in terms of the people that I've met. Like you and I had said, Gene, the best people in the world do martial arts. They're just the nicest, the most humble, the most respectful. I've met great friends, people that we mutually know. I've met my wife through the martial arts, and I train every day. I'm 45 years old, and I'm in better shape now than I could say I was in my late 20s and early 30s. So, yeah, I mean, it's just been a huge blessing for me.
Yeah, and it's funny because everybody that I talk to who's has spent their life practicing martial arts and learning the skill and everything, they all have the same attitude, and it's a positive confidence that they have, and it's really humble too. There's no arrogance like they can do anything. I think people that are trained in fighting understand that, it just takes one bad shot. You could be the greatest person, but it might not work. And
Yeah.
I think that's what people might not realize is that those that know how to fight know it's better not to if they can
Yeah.
avoid it, because you just don't know, especially when you're talking like a street fight and things like that. I mean, it just,
Yeah.
things can go bad real quickly, but having the confidence to be able to protect yourself and your family, I think is it really goes a long way. And the focus here today would be about workplace violence. I
Yeah.
deal with a lot of healthcare agencies, hospitals and things like that. And I talk to a lot of the nurses, and it always comes back that they say they don't know how to defend themselves. And I
Yeah.
always ask the question, have you ever taken any kind of self-defense? And I get one of two answers. No, is the first one. Or the other one was, yeah, I took a one-day seminar.
Yep.
And I said, so you know nothing. And they
Yeah.
said, no, no. So you're like, we talked about this. The
Yeah.
misconception is that when you take a class, a lot of those self-defense seminars, I think they're awesome. I think they're really important, but they're just sort of like the preview of what you need to know.
Well said.
And a lot of people confuse that with they know something, right? Has that been your experience?
100%. I think those one-day seminars and workshops, and we do them at our school. Like I was mentioning to you, for example, we do a women's personal safety seminar sometimes twice a year, usually in April because of Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And I think it's a great preview, like you said. It builds awareness to how violent things can turn and how quickly things can turn violent. And it builds awareness to, wow, there are skills and there's options that people can do to keep themselves safe. But the big misconception is that by doing it one time that you are now capable of defending yourself, and they don't realize that um, it takes years of drilling and repetition and muscle memory to be able to truly defend yourself. And while I love building awareness for people, I've seen people walk out of my school, unfortunately, after those one-day seminars with a huge misconception of their abilities at that point. And we always encourage them to continue to train and to learn. Unfortunately, not a small number of them do, but most of them don't. And I cringe at the idea of what could happen if somebody truly attacked them. I'll share a quick story that kind of hits along this point. I started when I was 10, and I remember when I was 13, I was in school and I was getting bullied. And long story short, I knew I had to stand up to this kid who was bigger than me, and I was scared to death, quite honestly. But I stood up to him. Well, sure enough, he took a swing at me. And I slipped the punch, just like we drill in class thousands of times. I slipped the punch, cracked him back, hurt him. Then the fight got broken up. But I don't know who was more surprised, him or me, because the reaction and the muscle memories what took over. I certainly wasn't ever thinking, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this move and then this. No, not the case. The punch came and I slipped it, just like we had done, like I said, hundreds of times in class or more, and countered like we did in class. And if it wasn't for that drilling and that repetition and muscle memory, that could have went sideways real quick. And so that's the reality, is that people want to do it once and then be done with it, but the reality is they need the training, and not to mention just the other benefits that go along with it. Fitness, what a fun way to work out, like you and I were talking about. I mean,
Oh yeah.
You get your heart rate up. With martial arts, you're working flexibility, strength, endurance. You're learning while you're working out, and you meet some of the best people that you could ever want to meet. So it's a win-win-win-win. And I can't encourage enough people to do it, because it's so huge.
Yeah. So one of my jobs, I was the SWAT commander for many years at our agency, and we taught all firearms. I'm a firearms instructor, and everyone's like, gosh, you're really good. I'm like, no, I trained, hours and hours and hours and hours, and the repetition. And people are like, well, you make it look easy. I'm like, no, I started off, I was a train wreck, and the skill is something that you have to keep doing. And even to this day, if I don't continue to train,
Yep.
you start to lose the fluidity of what you're doing, and it comes back faster the more you've done it.
Sure.
But it's the same concept, exactly what you're saying. And I can actually think of times when I was, working on road patrol, and I would have an altercation with somebody, and I would think, let me try this arm bar that I saw one time. I'm like, yeah, that didn't work.
Yep.
Because I wasn't skilled at it. It wasn't something, you have to think about how do you put this together? And of course they're now actively resisting you. So it's not somebody letting you do it. So you're not getting that ability to put it into place. So yeah, it's really important. And I think that's something that everyone needs to understand. Those classes, those seminars, whatever you want to call them, it's really just an opening into the world that you could be part of, that you could understand. And I think they're great. I always tell them, if you're going to go one time, and you don't like it, look for another one. Maybe jujitsu's not for you.
Yeah.
Maybe you need Muay Thai. There's so many different things, because not everyone, I know you'll everybody that only does one will say that their version of martial arts is the best.
Of course. Yeah.
And the truth is, why is there mixed martial arts? Because one is not always better than the other.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Bruce Lee had it figured out back in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
In that every martial art has its strengths, but they all have their weaknesses.
Yeah.
I train in Kempo, Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu. I've done some Krav Maga training, and I'll be the first to tell you that each one of them have tremendous attributes, great skills, very effective. However, I did stand-up martial arts for the first 22 years of my martial arts training. And while that was great, I knew if somebody took me to the ground, I was going to be in trouble. So that's what prompted me to start learning jujitsu. Not to mention, I just saw so many of my friends doing it and getting
Yeah.
good and enjoying the process, and I have. So it's been great. But yeah, I mean, I agree with what you said that maybe one isn't right for one person, or maybe they find a school that just doesn't gel. But look for another school,
Yes,
because
exactly. Exactly.
you're gonna find that that fit in that culture. And I think that's probably really important when people look for a gym is find a place with the right culture,
Yes.
with a place that, we say in Elite Force, it's the Elite Force family. And we want people to feel like they're part of a family. And I love it when my students say like the dojo is their happy place. And
Yep.
I always chuckle and I go, man, the place where you go to learn how to fight is your happy place. But
Yeah.
it's true because people go there and they're absolutely uh, excited. They're fired up. You can hear my dog.
Yeah. That's all right.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, it is. So I would just tell people if they tried one gym and it wasn't the right fit, keep looking because there's so many different styles of martial arts. There's so many different instructors,
Yep.
and you will find that right fit. And
Yeah.
the benefits you're going to get are just off the chain.
Yeah, and I think you almost know right away when you walk in somewhere with martial arts. You know almost just the way they greet you, or that was my experience where I went.
Yeah,
And actually a couple places that I've looked at, really every one of them, but the one I mean, I like immediately it was like I was family, and I was like,
yeah,
you don't even know me, and just the kindness and just amazing. So it's
yeah,
it's definitely something that I always advocate for, especially when you're in an environment where you are predisposed to being attacked.
yeah,
The nurses are really having a hard time right now, for a variety of reasons, but workplace violence is definitely one of the issues that they're dealing with that's making things 10 times worse.
sure,
And you know, if you look at where, and we'll talk about them, but just in general, when you're looking at close spaced areas,
yeah,
the advice I always give, and we talked about this, was controlling the distance,
yeah,
which is not always easy to do.
yeah.
But would you agree that's almost like the standard probably best case thing you could do?
100%. We have an anchor we use in class, and it's control the distance, control the outcome.
Yeah,
And yeah, if you can keep the threat further away from you, or even better, get a barrier in between you and the threat, your chances of not getting hurt go up tremendously. So I think distance control is huge, and I think just training people to learn to identify potentially dangerous situations in advance.
yeah,
Because like as a former police officer, crazy doesn't make an appointment. And and things can happen quick. But if you're for lack of a better term, your spider sense is just kind of going, okay, let me keep an eye on this guy or this person over here. I think just creating that awareness, not being paranoid, but being aware. And like we teach in our personal safety seminars, when you're going into an area, let's say a parking lot, just get in the habit of scanning left to right. We're used to taking in information left to right because that's how we read. And I think when people just get in the habit of walking into a new environment and doing that, and just being aware of potentially dangerous situations, somebody who's acting a little weird, a little different, being aware can help you react so much quicker and then lead to the outcome being so much better.
yeah, yeah. It's so we teach a lot of situational awareness training, and that's one of the things we talk about, how your limbic system is designed. From the inception of mankind, we have been designed with this like dinosaur brain that warns us of all these problems that are coming.
Yeah.
And we live in a society now, and people sometimes laugh when I say it, we're in a pretty safe society.
Mhm.
We're not worried about some saber-tooth tiger coming to attack us. So we suppress those feelings that we get, like something's not right. I mean, when I look at a lot of the active shooter incidents, you hear reports of people saying, well, I was in my office and I heard what I thought was, like fireworks. So I looked out and there was a guy with a gun.
Hmm.
And my question is, well, have you ever heard fireworks at work? Like, why are you suppressing that? I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah, yeah,
If you hear it, trust that feeling. And
yeah,
like you're saying, always, look for your surroundings. I tell everyone, at the very least, know where your exit is when you're walking in somewhere. Know where your exits are, because you
yeah,
may need to go to a different one than one you came in at.
yeah.
But yeah, it's the same thing with fighting. Understand, knowing the distance and paying attention to all those little clues. And it's the same thing with fighting. Like you said, when you're sparring with someone, or you're actually fighting with someone, you're looking to see where the next strike's going to come from, so you can counter it. Now, the more training you have, obviously, you almost not even thinking about it. It almost is a natural,
Yeah.
which way to move.
And you can
Because
anticipate
you
based
start,
on their body position, where they are, what they're doing. That's something that is really big in combative martial arts, Muay
yeah,
Thai, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. You know based on the distance they're at, what tools they're starting to use, what they're likely to do after that.
yep,
You've trained jujitsu, and they always say, like, in this position, they're likely to do one of three things. And
yep,
when you know that and you've been drilled on that over and over again, you're prepared for all three,
yep,
and you're starting to already think about and reacting to what they do when they move. You have a
yeah.
beat on it, and
It's
and
like
that's really,
physical chess, right?
yeah, oh, 100%. And it's incredibly fun, but it's very empowering when you know if it goes here, my chances of being okay are pretty good.
Yeah,
I mean, obviously, nobody wants to be there in the first place, but if you have
yeah,
no control over that,
yeah,
there is a lot of confidence you have about of getting out of there safely.
yeah.
You know?
And I think that if people start to realize the value, and like I said, I mean, you hit on also the fitness level of it, alone is a reason to do it. I mean,
Yeah.
some of the hardest workouts I've ever had
Oh
were
yeah,
just workouts. I mean, just the warm ups. I was like, I got to go
yeah.
45 minutes. How am I going to last this class? And it's been
Oh
great. I'm in pretty decent shape, so it's tough to do.
yeah, yeah,
But just it's there's the benefits, physical, the mental, like the stress relief after a workout. I mean, I would be smiling ear to ear.
yeah,
I just spent every ounce of energy, and I was so happy. Like the
yeah,
endorphins, everything was great, and the confidence of understanding something. But when you're in an environment where it's a high stress environment, law enforcement, you know, healthcare, all these things where or even really any of the first responders, having those skills, number one, to protect yourself, are important. Having the ability to find a venue to burn off the stress that you have is really important, and
sure,
keeping you fit. I mean, the
sure.
the benefits are just overwhelming.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
you had brought up before we went on air here about your belief that, or about law enforcement, some agencies allow, or are paying for jujitsu for up to blue
yeah,
belt.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I thought it was such a great program. I only learned about it maybe 4 or 5 months ago, and I thought, wow, what a great thing for police officers to know, because unfortunately, police officers are so scrutinized right now with
yeah,
everything they do.
yeah,
And even when it's clearly self-defense, there's somebody out there putting a different spin on it. And when a police officer knows how to control somebody and restrain them without having to use striking, like
yeah,
punches and elbows, and
yep,
it can diffuse the situation. It can keep that officer out of hot water from a PR
of course,
standpoint. It's just such an empowering thing. Not to mention, it would just keep cops so much healthier. Because
yeah,
unfortunately, there are some cops that are overweight,
sure,
and I would love to see them. And I think they would agree. They could all do their job so much better. I mean, every one of us could be. The more
of
fit we
course,
are, the better life we're going to lead, and the more effective we're going to be. But police officers, especially, I think, because it can be a very physical job, and
yep.
um, and so, yeah, I thought it was great, and I hope that program just catches fire right across
Yeah.
the country,
I,
because
I- I've I've seen it in a few places. I'm pretty sure our local PD does that right now. About police being scrutinized. I think that's been true for a long time. What I think is also true is that now everybody's scrutinized. If you look at the whole culture that we have, where if you do something wrong, everyone just kind of gangs up on you, and I think we lose the fact that people are human. Mistakes are made, all that kind of stuff. But even in like, again, even in healthcare, God forbid that a nurse makes a TikTok video of while they're on a break about that something fun that they're blowing off steam, and then everyone's like, "Oh, I thought you're so overworked." It's the same. It's just ridiculousness that goes on. So I think everybody's scrutinized.
Well,
Um, but
everybody has a voice today.
but
And
but I but I get I totally get what you're saying,
yeah,
I think that when you're looking, I'm going to kind of pinpoint a little bit more towards from workplace violence. One of the big things aspects of workplace violence is active shooters, and we talk
yeah,
a lot about the run hide fight, and it's a great concept, and it's again, if you understand fighting, you understand that there's almost no structure. You almost have to go with how things are going. And a lot of people look at it as run, hide, fight. It's very structured, and
yeah,
sometimes you only have a chance to fight.
yeah.
Like there's no chance. And again, we say, strike hard and strike fast, and with everything you've got, because that's the time that you do it, and those hesitations. So can you speak about that, maybe a little bit about, that concept of like, if you're going to do it, you need to be all in?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a misconception that, striking first makes you the bad guy.
Yep.
Well, no. I've had many conversations with police officers, and according to the BSO officers down here in Broward that I've spoken to, if you're in fear for your life because of a situation that was imposed on you, you now have the right to do whatever you need to do to get out of it. And I'll give you an example that he gave to me was, let's say that you're leaving work, and you're trying to get in your car to go home to your family, and there's a person there who's stopping you from getting in your car, and they're threatening you, and you try to go around them, and you can't. Well, you're at a point now where this person's threatening you, they're not letting you exit. You now are empowered to do what you need to do to stay safe and get home to your family. And at that point, it's on, and you have to know how to strike. You need to be aggressive and go to the point where they're not going to stop you anymore.
Yeah.
And you have to be all in, because if you don't, and you're too passive, and they attack you, we all act better than we react. Well, I
Yeah.
would rather be the one acting in a self-defense situation because of the potential violence that's being brought to me, than let that guy attack me, and now I'm immediately a step behind, because when you're reacting, you're always going to be a step behind.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
so I think, empowering people to know that, sometimes you will have to strike first, and you're going to have to make it physical, because if you don't, something really, really bad can happen. And that's where, teaching people how to strike the eyes, the throat,
Mhm.
the groin, the knees, 8 pounds
Oh
of
yeah.
pressure to take somebody's knee out. But guess
Oh yeah.
what? That guy is not going to be following you after you put him on his butt for taking his knee out. And
Yeah.
these are things that we talk about all the time. And some people might consider it a little, controversial, you're being aggressive. Well, when in my mind, I'm going to be responsible for my own safety. And if somebody brings a violent situation to me, my family, anybody I care about, and they're not letting you exit. Now, obviously, if you can exit, yeah, that's always the best way. But sometimes, let's take the case in point where somebody's just not letting you get in your car. That's a different situation. And when you feel threatened and scared, and it's dark, you have to be responsible for your safety and do what you need to do so you can get home to your
Yeah.
family.
And you hit something that we just pound into people's heads all the time, is that you need to be responsible for your own safety. It's we harp on it because, if one of the biggest misconceptions with workplace safety and safety in general is that there are people there that will protect me. I have security guards, I have police that will help me, and
Mhm.
those may be true, but unless they're standing right next to you, they're not there. You are going to be on your own. You need to be responsible for your own protection.
Yeah,
So if
yeah,
you go somewhere and something doesn't feel right, don't think, well, if something goes wrong, I'll call the cops. Just leave. You're better off just leaving. If you get in a situation where you can't leave, you need to know how to defend yourself to the point where help can arrive or you can escape.
Yeah.
It's some people, when you say that, they're like, well, that's not my job. I'm like, okay, well, you have an option. You can be a victim or you can survive an incident, and it's your choice. And sadly, I've had people, in some of our classes, like I could never, if I was in an active shooter situation, we'll tell them, like, find something, smash them over the head, fire extinguisher, flagpole, stab them, whatever like, everything's open at that point, right?
Yep.
And they said, well, I don't know if I could do that to a person. And I said, well, what's going to end up happening is you're going to get killed.
Yeah.
Well, and it's because we don't want to think that there's violence in the world. And if we say, well, yeah, there's violence, well, it's not going to happen to us. And I'll tell you that there's from my experience, things go from good to bad so fast that you need to be ready. I've been caught off guard at times, and I've also stopped things because I was paying attention.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of those things. I think we lose that because I think that we want to live in a non-violent world, and it's just not the way it is, right?
No, I mean, and I think you said something important, is that day to day most people aren't encountering violence, so it's not on the forefront of their brain.
Yeah.
However, like you said, things can go dark really quick, and that idea, people just have to understand that if somebody's bringing that level of violence to you, you're going to be the victor or the victim. And being the victor doesn't necessarily mean that you're, kicking their butt and everything. Being the victor, in my mind, means you get away safely and you can get back home to your family. And you're safe, you're healthy, you're not injured. In my mind, that's winning the fight. And if that means, you get away, great. If it means you have to use some skill and some aggressiveness to put this person in a position where they cannot attack you anymore. They can't come back at you. That's what I teach my students is I'm like, look, you keep going until you know that help is coming, or that person is not going to get up and keep coming after you. Yeah. And that's just the reality of it. And you have to look at it like you got to not only protect yourself, but your family and the people you care about, because God forbid somebody ever tried to harm your child or your spouse, or it's. So I think empowering people and getting them to understand the law, that when you could say, hey, I was in fear for my life, and that changes the game. I couldn't escape. They wouldn't let me escape. I tried, and so I had to do this. Well, you're doing the right thing, and I mean, listen, I'm a big advocate of the Second Amendment and firearms. I think, I don't believe that guns kill people. I think people kill people.
Sure.
And I think that most people out there have good intentions, but there's some that don't. And, like you said, it could turn dark quick. So I think people need to be trained. And I think people just need to make it part of their lifestyle, because it can really change their confidence level, their awareness level, and their ability to keep themselves safe and defend themselves and their family.
Yeah, and it's we really do. I think we really do have a lot of people that don't realize the dangers that are out there. And you said it's not about being paranoid; it's about being prepared. We say that all the time. Preparation is what will get you through everything. And when we're training on people with firearms, I always have to say, if you have it, doesn't mean you can use it or should use it. Even if you're allowed to, it doesn't mean that you should.
Yeah.
And realize that going from an altercation to deadly force is not going to be good for you. You need to learn how to defend yourself as well. So a lot of for our more intermediate classes, we'll do some hands-on drills where we're doing some how do you block a punch? How do you, how can you do, because that's part of something you need to understand, because you're not going to be able to go to that right away. Of course, if they have another weapon, then you're more inclined. But if you can Google any or go on YouTube, you'll see videos all the time of people pulling guns when there was no right to pull a gun at all.
Right. No.
So
100%.
Yeah.
I think that what's interesting, and I did a tactical shooting course. The one I'm referring to, I did about 10 years ago. I've done many since then, but we did a drill where the person acting as the attacker was about 20 feet away.
Mm-hmm.
And your job, we had a rubber gun, and your job was to try to pull the gun out before they got to you.
Yep.
And nobody could. And
Yeah.
so, I think the firearm is great for self-defense, and I think that there's a time and a place when you should use it. There's definitely times when you shouldn't. However, that just because you have it doesn't mean that you're going to be able to get to it quickly. And I was amazed, and I'd like to think that I'm a fairly fast person, how quickly that person covered like 20 or maybe it was 25 feet. I can't remember, but it was a good amount of distance where I didn't think I'd have trouble. And everybody did. And the other thing I think people don't realize is that when you get into a physical altercation, it's not like you're like, okay, I'm ready. No, what happens is your vision blurs, your hand-eye coordination goes out the window, your heart rate goes through the roof, your ability to grip and grab goes away. And so things are much different because of the adrenal dump that hits.
Yeah.
And that one-time seminar that somebody did isn't going to help them because they're not prepared and they haven't been drilled on this is what happens. This is what you're going to feel like.
Yeah.
And, all of a sudden these, really fancy moves aren't going to work. So we teach beginners things like palm strikes and elbows and front kicks and knees because, your palm's a big surface area. Whereas sometimes if people don't know how to punch, they might hit with the wrong part of their hand. They'll miss because they don't have, the training. And so, big movements like palms, elbows, knees, front kicks are good. But yeah, when an altercation happens, you experience that adrenal dump and all of a sudden your coordination you think you have, you don't have. And now that does get better when you have a tremendous amount of training because you've been in those situations, live self-defense training, sparring or rolling, you get accustomed to it and then you can react a little bit more like yourself. But if you're not trained, it's a much different experience.
Yeah. Because your body is designed when there's a threat, when your body thinks there's a threat, your limbic system again kicks in, and you end up making yourself smaller, and that constricts everything. If you think if someone jumps out and scares you, everyone kind of cowers. You don't realize you're making yourself smaller, which means that it's hard to make movements. Your body's not going to function the way it is. We've seen it in law enforcement training, where we've done some force on force training where some of the officers put in a high, more SWAT level training where there's a lot of stimulus coming at you. And they, we'd watch them. They would have trouble walking, like that. Just the movements were very stiff. They did fine overall, but you could see that their normal mobility was changed just because we've added a little more stress to the situation. Yeah. And again, this isn't all about the purpose of why I wanted you. It wasn't so much to say everyone needs to learn how to fight. You need to learn how to fight to survive. It's not about, oh, I can go kick this person's butt. I can do. It's not about that. It's how you learn how to carry yourself, the confidence, the survivability, being able to identify a threat or how someone's moving. If someone's, kind of got their fist clenched, something might be coming. Like you pick up on these things. Sure. And people aren't aware of that. I think that most people these days, I'm sure it was the same with you, well, you already said it, growing up, kids get into fights. And I think there's fights now, but I don't think they're really fights like we grew up with. Right. Fights we grew up were like a one-on-one kind of thing. Now it's like jumping up, 10 people on one person. That's not a fight. But you learn, you know what a punch feels like. I know what it feels like to get punched in the face. Yes. And like Tyson says,
blocking with my face used to be my best move. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I caught a lot that way. And that's why I look like this.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
but you understand it. You understand, okay, that's, I don't want to get punched. How do I get it? How do I learn not to take a punch? How do I learn how to move? How do I learn what are the signs of someone that's going to hit me? And I think that when it comes to being in these environments, just having that, even just a very low level training, you don't have to be a black belt. No. Having starting the process of learning, it's amazing how much you start to open up and you start to see what movements look like, and how people, unless you're really trained, you're not aren't gonna, show it as much as others. But some people just they don't realize. I mean, I've seen so many times people that will just they're standing with their fists clenched, and they're going to fight,
Yeah.
and I would just stand there calm. I would be like, all right, I know punch is coming,
Mhm.
and it was not a big deal,
Mhm.
or you put your hands up, hey, relax,
Yeah.
relax, and you do all that kind of stuff. It's or you step back and you keep your distance, all those
Yeah.
things, and I think that you don't have to have a life of jujitsu, kempo, any of the martial arts. You don't need to spend your entire life doing it. I advocate for it. I wish I did it when I was younger.
Mhm.
I feel like I missed out on so many things that I wish I would have known. But I don't think it's that you feel like it's got to be this lifelong commitment if you don't want it to. But it's also not one class. It's you need to spend some time understanding fighting, understanding what it's like, to if it's jujitsu, being completely wrapped up, and you can't. I remember the first time I rolled, I it was a brown belt, and I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, I can't even move. And this guy looked like he was like watching TV, and I'm like fighting with everything I got, and I can't figure out why I can't move my legs.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, what is going? And it just like, to me, it opened up my eyes like, oh, fighting is not just your arms, it's your legs too. Oh, and it just this whole world opened up to me. And so I think it's that exposure, understanding, even on a basic level, is better than just a
Yeah.
1-day class. Those 1-day classes are phenomenal, but it's really an introduction. It's an
Yeah.
introduction to finding something that is good, and spending some time learning about it. Really would go so long to help a lot of people um, avoid getting hit, getting hurt, or at least given the ability to delay an attack before help can come. You know,
Yeah, I think you kind of alluded to, training in different scenarios.
sure,
Okay, hey, what happens? I mean, first of all, I think when you have a little bit of training, you start to pick up on things. You see a clenched fist, you know something bad's coming. But a lot of people that are instigating violence aren't really trained. So
exactly.
they're not your technical boxers that are throwing these good. I mean, they'll wind up, and if you're trained, you'll spot that. You'll see them start to cock back. You'll see them adjust their position to be able to to throw a punch. And when you're trained, you pick up on those things. And I think in training as well, you're preparing for different scenarios that could happen. I mean, today I was training with a guy who was about 265 pounds. I'm about 185, 190. He's mounted on top of me. That's a big, hard person to get off of you,
Sure.
and if let's just say that person had bad intentions, and it could be very, very dangerous. And the reality is too, most people who are going to bring violence to somebody, it's going to be somebody bigger approaching somebody smaller,
Yeah,
right? And I mean, that's just very rarely do you see the guy who's 5'5" going after the guy who's 6'2". I mean, it does happen, don't get me wrong, but
I
it's
agree.
rare, and so being able to understand leverage and being able to understand uh, what that is like, just that experience of what that pressure is like, and that reach, and you hit the nail on the head that controlling the distance. Sometimes you want to be really far away, and if the fight happens and you're smaller, you want to bridge the gap and get close. Don't give
Yes.
them their
Yep.
nice long tools to be able to use against you,
Yep.
so that you can get in a range where you can now do something. So, um, there's so much to it, and those scenarios just build your confidence, build your awareness. And the 1-day seminars, you hit the nail on the head. It builds awareness, and I think it hopefully it gets you to realize how much you don't
Yeah.
know.
Exactly.
And then you say, okay, you know what, I need to make this a priority. And like you said, you don't have to do it for 35 years like I have. You even if you give yourself a good 6 months of regular training, that puts you at a much different level of ability in terms of your ability to protect yourself. And even if that's what you do, that's great. The downside of that, though, is once you stop training, you start to lose it.
Yeah.
And our jujitsu coach, Professor Polga, says, you could have a great black belt. That black belt stops training for a couple years. When they come back, they're going to have a hard time with some blue belts.
Yep.
And that's just because of the timing and the reaction, and you lose it. It's, and like you said, also it comes back quickly once you're back in it, but you do lose it.
Yeah.
So there's a difference between knowledge of like, hey, I know what to do, and then being able to apply that knowledge
Yeah.
in under duress in a real situation. Those are two different things. And
Yeah.
and sometimes people say I have this knowledge. Well, knowledge isn't power. Applied knowledge is power, in my opinion. And
I completely agree. And a couple points that I want to touch on. Um, so there's been studies, and I base a lot of this off of law enforcement studies about officers that have been attacked or killed, and one of the things that they found was that you were mentioning that a big guy usually going after a smaller person. You know, bad people look for easy prey. They're not looking for the tough prey. They're looking for the easiest thing they can get. If you think about in the wild, when there's a lion chasing a pack of wildebeest, they're going for the one that the weak one that can't keep up with everyone that runs. That's who they're going after, not the big ones that are. So it's the same concept. And in law enforcement, they do, FBI every few years they do these studies, and they talk to, they look at the officer that was hurt or killed. They look at the offender, and they've interviewed the offenders, and the offenders always say they're looking for the person that doesn't seem to project confidence. So either their uniform is not tucked in, their shirt's wrinkled, whatever. They're not in shape, they're a little overweight or whatever. They're looking for that kind of thing, and it's the exact same thing that we teach to everybody.
yeah,
Bad people look for easy prey. If you have an air of confidence about you, they're probably not, they're going to pick up on it. We have these feelings, especially criminals. They know how to read people a lot better than most people, because they know how to find that.
that's
And
what they do.
having that background in martial arts, it builds that confidence. So
Yeah,
when you see someone, you look at them, you're like, all right, like you're not afraid to look somebody in the eye. But most people, you can tell who a victim's going to be if you look at them and they turn away, right? Like they'll look right away. And I try, I'm like, stop, don't look away. Eye
mhm,
contact is a good thing. Don't stare like you're going to fight, but
yeah,
let them know that you see them. Someone know you're coming.
yeah.
And the other thing that, oh God,
Oh, go ahead. No, sorry.
well, I want to touch on that. You talked about, the drill that you did where they were 20, it's 21, it's called the 21-foot rule. And
Okay.
it was done by the Force Science Institute, which is law enforcement, has to do with use of force and stuff. Phenomenal research comes out of there. And, the theory was that if someone's that distance, they can attack you with a knife before you can get your gun out, and they will kill you.
Hmm.
Well, that had been the rule for, ever since I was in law enforcement. It's actually been debunked. It's actually farther than that. They have had
Hmm.
studies where they've had people with a knife at 50, 60, even 70 feet away. And before the officer can get a shot off, they're already on top of them.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
you're right. Action will always beat reaction. Confidence will stop most of that, though. Most people don't want to have a confrontation. That if you look like you're ready for it, they're going to walk away from you. And that's what we try to teach everyone. You don't have to hit somebody to win the fight. You win the fight by letting them know you're not a victim. You win the fight by not getting in the fight at all, because they know not to mess with you. So, yeah.
and what you said is exactly what we teach kids in bullying situations.
Yep.
Right now, bullying is the leading cause of teen suicide.
Yeah.
And, one of the things that we reinforce to our school age kids, teenagers, is that you project confidence, you're immediately going to go off the radar from a lot of these bullies because they want a soft target.
Yep.
They're really not. I mean, 95% of bullies aren't looking to fight. They just want somebody to pick on to feel better about themselves. And if you're that person that walks slouched over, down, doesn't make eye contact, the very soft tone of voice, you're a big target for them. Whereas you get somebody who just walks with their shoulders back. In fact, in our kids' classes, we do this thing called a posture check, and we say shoulders back, chin up, eyes straight ahead. And we're just reminding them. And of course, when they say it, they do it. We're
Yeah.
reminding them this is how you want to stand. You want to project that confidence, look people in the eyes, speak clearly. You don't have to yell or scream or be aggressive, but speak clearly, be concise, be direct, be confident. That bully's probably not going to mess with that kid because they're projecting that confidence. And we've had some really good success stories with our kids just from that alone. Some of them have had to defend themselves, and it's worked out that they were able to, but a lot of them just were able to not be in the fight because the bully realized this isn't the person that I want to pick on, and then they go to somebody else. So it works for kids as much as adults, and something I thought when you said 50 or 60 feet of somebody coming at you with a knife, I can imagine that officer's heart rate is through the roof. Again, their ability to grip and their ability, their coordination to aim and hit the target. I remember they had us do a drill where we had actually brought some of the pads from our dojo. And for 1 minute, we had to strike the pad very aggressively. And then our heart rate's through the roof. And then they said, okay, now draw your firearm. And there were balloons on the wall that we had to hit.
Yeah.
And they represented, bad guy, the person you're trying to protect. Everybody's accuracy was horrible.
Sure.
And so you quickly realize that unless you're trained and have done that over and over and over and over again, it's probably not going to work out really well for you. So we're kind of going back, and I know we're kind of saying the same thing a lot of different ways, but it's true that training up front and that repetition and the muscle memory is what will save you. And
a lot of the my more intermediate and advanced classes, we start putting physicality into it. So we will do, all right, give me 10 burpees, give me 20 burpees, like depending on their fitness level. Now that little group you had that was nice, let's see you hit that now. And they're like, oh my God, I can't. And it's not to make them feel bad. It's to show the awareness. Like, listen, in real life, you're not going to be shooting a piece of paper. They might be shooting back at you. They might be attacking you. Your heart rate is going to go through the roof super fast, and you've got to be able to control that. And again, right back into why fitness is so important, to be able to control all that big dump of chemicals that goes through your body, and being able to make sure that you don't get brought into such tunnel vision that you can't see what else is around you.
Yeah.
And again, the confidence thing, I think what you're saying about bullying was absolutely right. And I think, again, it applies right back to a lot of people. Like, again, I go right back to the nurses. And I was talking to a couple a few weeks ago, and they were telling me a story about someone came in and they were like, oh, this person's coming in, and they knew to get the one nurse because the one nurse was not going to put up with it. And she wasn't a big girl, but she would go there and say, hey, knock it off. And the guy would, bigger guy, smaller nurse, because she knew, she was like, I'm not going to tolerate that. And people will do that. You've got to have that confidence. It's just so important. And again, you don't have to be Bruce Lee. You don't have to have all of the skills. You have to have some knowledge, some experience, and you do need to practice. I mean, you can't just, I probably should phrase the way I said it a little bit more when I was saying you don't have to do it for your whole life. It's not that you have to continue down the path but you have to continue to train. You still have to continue to understand how to do certain things.
Yeah.
So it's not just once you know it, you don't. You'll get rusty with it. But what won't get rusty with it, honestly, is that new confidence. Usually that stays a pretty long time, and you've got that more general awareness, which I think is really, really critical.
100%. That it does stay with you, and just projecting that out into the world immediately puts you in a different category if somebody's considering, putting violence on somebody. That person that's projecting that confidence, even though they might be a little rusty, that person doesn't know that. To them, this is somebody who, if I go at them, I'm gonna have my hands full. And it's amazing to me. Like my wife is a 5th degree black belt, and she's one of our instructors. And I joke around with people. I'm like, this is my bodyguard, Melissa. She's my wife too, But Melissa's not a big person. She's 30 pounds, 135 pounds, but she projects that confidence. And I've seen her in certain situations, and she's done Muay Thai fights, and she's just a very accomplished martial artist. And but the confidence that she projects and some of the things I've seen her do, I feel a little safer just hanging around with her. So
no, absolutely. I get it.
Yeah, she really is that, like, case in point of somebody that's not a big person, but will absolutely stand her ground and project that confidence. And I like the term assertive.
Yeah,
I think sometimes aggressive can be a little, not the right word, but she's assertive in that she's going to make sure that she's safe, the people she cares about are safe, the violence isn't going to happen to them.
yep,
But yet, if it does, she's ready. And I think she's like, I look at we have a 11-year-old, and I love the fact that our daughter looks at her mom and says, yeah, my mom is confident, she's strong, she can keep me safe,
of course.
and I love that my daughter looks at her mom like that.
Yeah, that's pretty
It's
awesome.
very important. Yeah.
Definitely awesome. Yeah, again, I just, the whole thing about martial arts and the misconception about fighting and violence is really just it's so confounded that people believe that it's about the violence, and it's not about the violence. It's about not having violence. You need to learn how to control it. You need to learn violence, but it's not to promote that you go out there and start beating people up. It's to create a safer environment for you. I think personal safety is everyone's responsibility first and foremost. And it's something that I think that we kind of get away from a lot.
Mm.
I don't know what the real reason is, but I think that in the great world would be that there's no violence, but that's never going to happen. You've got to
Yeah.
accept that it's here. It's not all around you necessarily about to happen, but you need to be ready for it when you are. You don't have to be paranoid about it. And again, the best way to do it is through martial arts. I think that learning any of the fighting sports, like you said, they're all good. They all have their strengths. They're all, there's negatives to each one of them.
Sure.
And but learning something is really vital. And I think that a lot of the honestly, I think a lot of workplace violence could stop if people had the confidence.
Yeah.
I just really believe that, being able to just say, all right, if you want to fight, I'm ready for you. And most
Mm.
people back down. I
Oh
really
yeah.
think not
Yeah.
everything. It's some people are going to test you and you're going to have to do it, but at least you're ready. At least you
Yeah.
know something, right?
I think you're 100%. I think you're 100% accurate. I just recently I got a phone call from a lady probably within the last month or so, and she's like, I want to learn to take a self-defense course. I said, oh, that's great. She's like, well, I don't want to do like the martial arts with the belts and that. I said, look, I go, martial arts is self-defense. I go, the belts are just a measure of your experience level and your knowledge and your skill level. I said, but you need that process because it's not, self-defense, like we had said, is fitness, it's knowledge, it's experience, it's drilling. And I tried to get this lady to understand. She's like, well, I just want that. I said, we have to understand, to truly get that, you need all of this. And because it all goes hand in hand. And I wasn't successful in influencing her, but I think people, just make sure you're going to a martial arts school that is really focused on self-defense, and most of them are.
Yeah.
There's some that focus a little bit more on the art side of it, and but just make sure you're going to a place where they're teaching you effective self-defense, and just go along for the ride. Enjoy the fitness aspects, enjoy the different skills and drills and things they're going to have you do, because it's all beneficial. And hey, maybe you find you like striking martial arts a little bit better. Great. Maybe you find you like grappling or wrestling or jiu-jitsu a little bit more. That's great too. Maybe you find a program like the program we have, which incorporates the two together. Then great. But just get in the culture, get in just enjoy the process,
Yeah.
because I
And
think you'll enjoy it. You'll meet a lot of great people, and you're going to come out of it a whole hell of a lot more confident.
yeah, and
And aware
it's so much
and
fun.
able.
It's so much fun. I mean,
Yeah.
it really is. I told you earlier, and I'll tell everyone that, when I think the first time I got to roll and jujitsu, I came back and home and I mean, I could barely walk. I was
Yeah.
so exhausted, and I was just I was red and I was sweaty, and I was like, "What happened?" I said, "I had the best day of my life."
Isn't that something?
She
That's
laughed.
why I train every day, you know?
Did you win anything?" I said, "No, I got my butt kicked
Yeah.
so badly." And she goes, "And that was fun." I go, "Oh my God, it was the greatest thing." And
Amazing.
it was humbling. I realized, wow, I really don't know what I'm doing in some of this stuff. And but it was great. And I I can't recommend it enough for everybody, for all aspects of their life, especially when it comes to stuff like workplace violence and things like that. Craig, I'm going to put your website up here. Is there any contact information other than that that you can tell everyone how to reach you?
Yeah, EliteForceMartialArts.com and Elite Force Jiu-Jitsu is our jiu-jitsu school. And I'm on social media. My title is Shihan, Shihan. Shihan means teacher of teachers and all-around good guy. Well, that's what I say. But, at Shihan Haley, Twitter, Instagram. You can find us on Facebook. You just search Elite Force Martial Arts or for myself. And yeah, if people have questions, they want to reach out. I'm happy to help them, answer any questions, point them in the right direction. And yeah.
Perfect. All right, Craig, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Everyone, stay safe.
All right. Take care. Thank you for having me.